My life was once ordinary. I was just another struggling musician trying to carve out a place in a world that seemed determined to overlook me. It was in those early days, when I had nothing but hope and the sound of my own music to guide me, that the strange things started happening. At first, it was subtle, a flicker of light in the corner of my vision when I was rehearsing, or the feeling that someone was watching me when I was alone in my apartment. I couldn't explain it, and I didn't know what to make of it, but something inside me told me to listen. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. I was sitting in a small cafe, scribbling down lyrics on a napkin, trying to capture the melody in my head. I glanced up just as the person at the table next to mine opened their mouth to speak. The thought popped into my head, clear as day, they're about to ask me if I'm a musician. I hadn't even seen them look at me yet, but the words echoed in my mind. Then, to my surprise, they said exactly that, "Are you a musician?" It was strange, but I didn't think much of it at first. Then, that night, things took a turn. I was sitting alone at the same cafe, lost in my thoughts, when I felt a sudden chill run through me. I looked down at the napkin in front of me, and my breath caught in my throat. Scrawled across it were words I hadn't written, a messy, hurried script. "Why are you doing this?" My heart skipped a beat. No one had been near my table. I couldn't explain it. I had no answers. But in that moment, I realized something was happening, something I couldn't control. It was as if someone or something was trying to communicate with me, to reach me in ways I couldn't fully understand. I stood at the edge of the forest, feeling the hum of anticipation in the air. My eyes scanned the trees, the shadows beneath them stretching long and dark. I knew they were there, they always were, though I could never quite see them. There was a slight movement in the corner of my vision, something shifting between the trunks of the trees. A sudden, blinding light. It wasn't like anything I had ever seen. It was not from another car, nor from a passing street light. It engulfed everything, its brilliance so intense that my vision was completely consumed. A deafening crash erupted. Time felt like it slowed as the car spun violently, metal screeching against metal. I couldn't think, couldn't react. The light, still blinding, seemed to pulse around me. I could feel it, in some way I couldn't explain, like it was part of me now. Somewhere deep within, a voice whispered, "You are not alone." But I didn't know what it meant or how I could even respond. Colors, beyond anything I had ever known, began to weave through me. They weren't mere pigments, but living threads of energy, vibrant and alive. I once found myself standing before a vast, endless canvas, each stroke of color shifting and blending into another. I reached out, my fingers hovering just above the surface of the canvas, and I understood, each touch would alter the whole. In that moment, standing at the edge of that infinite canvas, I felt the interconnectedness of everything. I realized then that everything I have ever sought, every question I have ever asked, is rooted in this simple, profound truth: love is the foundation of the universe. I am at peace, for I know now that I am not alone. I am part of something infinitely greater than myself. I had crossed into another dimension, into the realm of darkness. The air here was colder, sharper, and yet, it was eerily still. No sound. No movement. It was as though the very essence of time and space had dissolved. I stood motionless, trying to make sense of my surroundings, but there was nothing to see, nothing to feel. The darkness pressed in, not just physically but emotionally too. A crushing weight settled on my chest. Despair seeped into the corners of my mind like a thick fog. I could hear my own thoughts now, louder than ever before. So I decided to stay. To sit with the fear, the regret, and the shame. But the longer I stayed, the more I saw the shape of it, how it wasn't just made of pain but also of unspoken truths. Love became the key. The love I had never given myself, the love I thought I was unworthy of. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but the more I faced my own shadows, the more I felt like I was finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. Whole. The noise around me grew louder. Shouting, sirens, people rushing toward me. I looked up to see a crowd of onlookers gathered, eyes wide with disbelief. Is she alive? I heard someone whisper. How is she not hurt? The words stung, but I couldn't focus on them. The paramedics arrived, kneeling down beside me. One of them placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes scanning me for any sign of injury, but he found none. Check her vitals again, he said, voice tight. There's no sign of trauma. No broken bones, no cuts. Maybe we should take her to the hospital, get a full scan, the second paramedic suggested. The doctor's face was the first thing I saw when I finally focused, his expression unreadable. You're lucky to be alive, he said, as if those words could bridge the chasm between the nothingness I had crossed and the life I now found myself in. But somewhere along the way, I began to see things differently. It wasn't immediate, it didn't happen all at once. It crept in slowly, like a shift in the wind, a change in the way the light touched the walls of my room. My injuries had been severe, too severe, according to the doctors. They had expected me to slip away, to fade into the nothingness I had briefly touched. I was no longer the person I had been before the accident. The old me had died, and in its place, I was something different. Not better, not worse, but changed. The survival wasn't the mystery. It was the shift, the transformation that followed. That was the real miracle. The psychiatric clinic is a place like no other. It's tucked away in a quiet part of the city where the hum of everyday life seems to fall away. I remember the first time I walked through its doors, the scent of antiseptic mingling with the faintest trace of lavender from the flowers by the window. As I settled into my role within the clinic, I began to notice something powerful, the effect of love and peace on everyone who walked through the door. And in that space, love and peace become the catalysts for growth, for understanding, for hope. It became clear that the only way to honor this journey was to share what I had learned. The wisdom wasn't mine to keep. It belonged to the world, to anyone who was still searching, still wandering. So I began to speak, to share the lessons life had offered me. I learned that even in the darkest times, there is a hidden thread of purpose. Elle realized that what I've gained must be shared, so others too can see that their own path has a purpose. I also realized that life is not defined by the challenges we face, but by how we rise above them. One particular experience stands out, a time when everything in my life seemed to fall apart. I lost my job and my personal life seemed like it was unraveling. In the midst of that difficult period, I found a new purpose. I began to see that I wasn't just living for myself anymore. My mission was to inspire others, to show them that they too could find strength in their struggles. Life is a sacred gift. From that day forward, I tried to live with a deeper awareness of reality. I made it a point to show love in every action and to express gratitude in all things. In doing so, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment.